I've tried to record this episode 3 times now. You don't need all the details, but the first recording had audio and some sync issues. The second time, I tried a new way of recording it and thought it was going to be perfect, and then it took like 8 hours to process, and that ended up not working either. And now I'm here, recording attempt number 3 and talking about something completely different from what I was going to in the first 2, because I'm a different person now. I'm a new person with a new perspective, and that perspective is life happens. Sometimes it happens a little bit, sometimes it happens a lot, but it happens. And when it does, you have some options. You can either let it completely ruin you and collapse inward, as I have the tendency to do sometimes, which means you retreat into frustration and anger and shame and paralysis and all the stories about why you're not good enough. Or you can name the reality, sit with it, and figure out how to move forward. So today we're talking about navigating the externals, not avoiding them or pretending they don't exist, but learning how to work with what's actually right in front of you versus what you wish was right in front of you. Because people with strong, successful businesses didn't just learn how to avoid problems. They learned how to navigate and how to move forward in spite of them. So voice actors know a lot about things going wrong. We audition all the time, and sometimes we win the audition, most of the time we don't. We deal with technical issues during live sessions, health issues that affect the way we sound, booking conflicts, dry spells that make us question everything. But those same skills that keep us resilient, even in this industry full of seeming rejection, translate directly into navigating setbacks in business, creative work, and in life. So no matter what the setback is, whatever the context is, if it's a business context or a personal relationship, even a health crisis or something going on in the family that's maybe pulling you away from work, or just the daily reality that sometimes nothing goes according to plan, this episode is about what to do next. So we're going to talk about some practical psychology of how to keep moving forward when nothing goes according to plan. So let's start with what usually happens when things go wrong. When external circumstances knock you off your feet, you basically have two immediate choices. The first one, as I mentioned, is collapsing inward. So this is tough and it's not pretty, feels terrible. It's telling yourself the story that this setback says something about you as a person. If you didn't get the job, it means you aren't good enough. If your equipment is rebelling against you, it's just confirmation that you shouldn't have been doing this in the first place. If you cannot find the time to do your studies and get your practice in, you tell yourself that you're the kind of person who's made really poor choices in life and has prioritized the wrong things. The behaviors that come along with this line of thinking, this collapsing inward, are very predictable. You stop doing productive things. You avoid people who believe in you because you fear that you can't live up to their expectations. You indulge in things that you know aren't serving you. Things like doom scrolling and eating poorly, ignoring exercise, canceling appointments, or just missing them. We tend to push positivity away when we're in this collapsing inward moment, including positive people, because when you're in that space, encouragement kind of feels like mockery. And then there's that negative thoughts cycle where you start thinking about, why is this so easy for everyone else? Why can't I be good enough? This terrible spot, and it's not fun. And this whole thing is paralyzing, and it's meant to be paralyzing because your brain is just trying to keep you safe, but it keeps you from moving forward. And really, moving forward feels impossible because you're struggling with this feeling of inadequacy. Okay, so let's leave that behind. The next path, or the next option you have, is to move forward, navigate forward. This path starts with something really simple, but it's revolutionary and for some reason just really hard to get there sometimes. Just name the reality without a story attached to it. Just, what are the circumstances? What happened? You say, fact, the recording didn't work. Again, I am potentially going to miss my deadline on this because of technical difficulties. There, that's the reality. And that's just data. It's not identity. There's no story attached to it, just raw facts. Then you sit with it. You don't have to rush to fix it or spin it to make it feel okay or hurry to make yourself feel better because it just is uncomfortable sitting in that. You let yourself feel the frustration, feel the disappointment, because those feelings are valid responses to difficulty. You accept it. That's what's true right now. It's not what you planned, but that's real. And then the critical part is you figure out a way to reframe it. Reframe it in a way that opens the door to possibility rather than shutting it down. Now, it's important that you don't lie to yourself about it. You don't change the facts. We'll talk about what it looks like to reframe in just a little bit. Psychologist Julian Rotter's research on locus of control shows that people who believe they have agency in their circumstances, even when those circumstances are difficult, show less depression and anxiety than people who feel like victims of their circumstances. But agency doesn't mean pretending that you control everything. It means identifying what you can control within the constraints you've been given. Dr. Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset versus fixed mindset demonstrates this beautifully. A fixed mindset says, this failure reveals my limitations. A growth mindset says, this failure reveals what I need to learn. It's the same circumstance, but a completely different trajectory. When something seemingly catastrophic in your voiceover career happens, like you book a job and then when you go to watch the commercial later, you find out they replaced you with someone else. Yeah, that happens. You can either decide that, well, you're clearly just not talented enough, or you can get curious, name the reality, and say, well, I wonder what the client wanted here. What can I learn from this experience? One path leads to potentially giving up, or at least telling yourself a story that makes it less likely for you to perform your best next time, and the other path leads to you getting better. And the choice between those two paths comes down to being able to name the reality without drowning in a negative story. So let me tell you about one of the worst professional disappointments I've had. I made it to the final round for a huge voiceover job, the kind of job that changes your whole year, potentially the trajectory of your business. It came down to two of us, me and one other actress. And I know this because there was some kind of mix-up and an email got forwarded to me that I don't think was supposed to have gotten forwarded to me. So I knew it was down to me and one other actress. I did the callback, felt really good about it, and then I waited. And it was one of those jobs where they needed you to be on the spot, like right then and there. So I had to go to a physical recording space and they told me to be waiting. They told me to be on standby. So I'm in the parking lot waiting for them to tell me they're ready for me to go in and start recording. And then my phone dings. It's an email from my agent and it just says, shoot, it didn't go our way. And that was very hard news to hear, especially with all the buildup and especially after having seen the client's feedback. And I knew that they loved what I did. So I just expected that it was mine. And I was physically at the studio and had to start the car, turn around, and go home. After I recovered enough to ask my agent for any type of feedback, they got back to me and said that they'd asked the client what happened. And apparently, and I assumed that there was something about my callback that they didn't like because my initial audition had been good enough to get me to that final round. So they must have not liked the callback audition. And when my agent asked about it, the information that we got was that the client didn't even listen to my callback. It had nothing to do with the quality of my read. The client knew that this was an account that was going to need someone who was going to be ASAP and ready right away. So they just hired the person who got their audition in first. And because the other voice actor sent in her callback before I did, she got the job and I didn't. My hopes had been really up on this, so I was devastated. And I spent the weekend just on the floor in specifically my kitchen for some reason. I felt really stupid for having taken too long on the callback because I just wanted to do a good job. But that kind of made the whole thing worse because it didn't have anything to do with how good of a voice actor I was. It was just a timing thing. So my initial reaction was to collapse inward. And I really did start to struggle with that downward spiral of thoughts that I had to talk myself out of. But none of those thoughts, the negative thoughts that I was spiraling in, were based on reality. But when you're laying face down on your kitchen floor, you're not really thinking in terms of reality. You're working with the story that your brain is telling you about what this setback means for you. Dr. Kristen Neff's research on self-compassion shows that we are often far, far more cruel to ourselves than we would ever be to a friend who is in the same situation. And that cruelty doesn't motivate us, it paralyzes us. So after the weekend on the floor, I had to make a choice. Stay in the story of inadequacy or find a way to move forward. So I started asking different questions. I mean, what did I learn from this experience? That in this industry, depending on the type of job, sometimes speed matters just as much or more than talent. And that's not personal, that's just factual information about how the industry works sometimes. Also, another fact is that I made it to the final two. That's pretty awesome. And it also taught me that I was building my business to a level where the tiny details matter. Now I know one more detail to really pay attention to. This reframe strategy is what I teach in my legacy branding mastermind. I like to call it see beauty everywhere. And this isn't a fake lie to yourself, pretend like everything's okay, put on a smile and move forward type of reframe. But it's actively looking for what you can learn, where the opportunity is, and what meaning you can create from that situation that helps you to make a different story and move forward and grow. So once I had that reframe, then the action became really clear. I knew that I had to let it go and move on. And again, this isn't just letting go of it and pretending like it didn't hurt, because it hurt a lot. Letting go of it and the fact that I wasn't going to let the negativity affect my identity or the trajectory of my business. I kept on auditioning, kept showing up, kept doing good work. And eventually I recovered. And now it's a story that I can tell with this lesson about how not to let really bad news define you. Navigating the externals feels like this in practice. You feel the feelings, you learn the lessons, you adjust what you can control, and then you keep moving forward. So what does this actually look like as a process? Not just a story that happened once, but a process that you can repeat so that you know what to do when those setbacks happen. So I want to give you a simple framework, because sometimes when you're just in the midst of it and you're spiraling, it's helpful to just have a plan. So step 1 is name the reality. State what happened without emotion, without interpretation, without a story, just name the facts. And personally, journaling really helps me with this. Sometimes my thoughts get untangled just thinking about writing them down. Your practice might be different. It might be helpful for you to talk to someone or go for a walk or just sit in silence or meditate. Whatever gets you to that point where you can clearly see what's going on right in front of you. Research from Dr. James Pennebaker at Texas University shows that expressive writing, just putting difficult experiences into words, decreases stress and improves both physical and mental health outcomes. The act of naming what's happening literally helps to regulate your nervous system. Step 2 is to sit with it. Don't rush to fix it. Don't immediately jump to solutions or silver linings or trying to make it okay. Just let yourself feel what you feel about what happened. Disappointment, frustration, exhaustion, anger, just whatever is there, just let yourself feel it. This step can be really hard for entrepreneurs and high achievers because we're wired to want to solve problems. Sitting with difficulty without immediately trying to solve it feels like a weakness. But bypassing your feelings doesn't make them go away. It just means they kind of come out sideways as burnout and resentment and that collapse inward that we talked about earlier. You don't have to wallow in them, but it is good to acknowledge them. Step 3 is accept it. This is what's real right now. Accepting it doesn't mean that you approve of it or that you're happy about it. It just means that you are acknowledging it. The Stoics taught that we don't suffer from the events in our lives, but from our judgments about those events. The actual external circumstance is neutral, so the suffering comes from insisting that things should have been different. When you accept what is, you free up all that energy you were spending on wishing it were different. And that energy can now go toward figuring out what to do next. Step 4 is the reframe. When you're reframing, it's important to remember you're not denying reality. You're just choosing how to hold it. And there are 2 types of reframes that I found helpful. The first one is to reframe the meaning. So you would say, what can I learn from this? What's the opportunity here? Or what does this make possible that wasn't possible before? So for me, instead of my failure to record this episode after multiple attempts means that I'm not cut out for podcasting and I should just quit right now, I can choose to reframe it as I now have this opportunity to share from this experience of having had this setback that I wouldn't have had otherwise, had everything gone smoothly and perfectly the first time. Or when you lose a job because of something other than your performance, like timing, you can choose to reframe it from, well, I'm clearly just not good enough, to I'm operating my business at a level now where these tiny details matter, and I can learn from that now moving forward. So in addition to reframing the meaning of the setback, you can also reframe your role within it. If you're being bombarded with auditions, and there's also life happening, and the weather is bad, and all of these things are happening that are interfering with your ability to get where you need to be on time and to do the auditions that you need to do, you can reframe your role as someone who's very protective of their time. And so during the times that you've set aside to do specific tasks, you are super present for those things. And you can communicate with people and tell them, these are the times I'm available to do excellent work for you. And because you're protective of your time, you also know the importance of rest and of being off the clock. And you can be very clear with people about your boundaries and tell them you're happy to work with them and provide them the things that they need within the times that you have set aside to do those things. But what's the criteria for a good reframe? Because we don't want to just be lying to ourselves or creating reframes that aren't actually helpful and don't move us forward. So I made some criteria for what constitutes a good reframe. First of all, it has to be true. You can't just make things up or lie to yourself about what's real. The reframe has to align with objective reality. Secondly, it has to be energizing. Has to motivate you to move forward towards the goals that you want. If it makes you feel more stuck or overwhelmed or defeated, then it's not a good reframe. The third criteria is that it should counter catastrophizing. If you're prone to spiral down and think about worst case scenarios and engage those in your mind and constantly are asking the what ifs, your reframe should be the opposite of that. It should help you to think rationally about what is the worst that could possibly happen? How often has the worst thing ever actually happened? And based on that, what's the likelihood of the worst thing actually happening? So the reframe should help you to think more positively rather than taking you down that rabbit hole of worst case scenarios. And the fourth criteria is that it should be kind, and it should encourage and promote you to be kind to yourself. That doesn't mean propping yourself up unrealistically or saying that you're capable of doing things that you're not actually capable of doing. It just means speaking to yourself in the same kind way that you would encourage someone else that you care about. And the last step in the framework is to act. Once you have your reframe, the action usually becomes pretty obvious. So with me and the recording issues, the action was to stop waiting on this crazy processing situation, just pick a different topic and re-record the episode. Basically, keep moving forward. The action doesn't have to be something big or monumental. It doesn't have to solve everything. It just needs to allow you to move forward. It just needs to eliminate that paralysis. As with almost all of the principles that I like to talk about in voiceover, these go far beyond voice acting because life happens to everyone. There are health challenges, family emergencies, relationship difficulties, financial setbacks, accidents, grief, natural disasters. All of these things happen to everyone. So every single person listening to this is navigating the externals. Things you didn't choose, things that you can't control, things that would be so much easier if they just weren't happening. And the temptation is to use those externals as excuses. It might sound like, well, I can't find the time to market because I have a family and I have young kids who need a lot of my attention. Or I can't take care of myself because I'm too busy taking care of everyone else. So all of those are invitations to reframe. I have young kids becomes I'm learning how to work in short bursts and to be kind to myself because my workday is not going to look like everyone else's. I have a demanding job becomes my job funds my creative work and teaches me discipline that I wouldn't have had otherwise. I'm too busy taking care of everyone else becomes I'm learning that taking care of myself isn't selfish. In fact, it's how I sustain my ability to care for everyone else. None of those reframes deny the reality of the circumstances, but they do open up possibility instead of leaving that collapse as the only alternative. This is where voice actors and performers have an advantage that translates directly to business, to entrepreneurship, and to leadership. Because auditioning is part of the process, and because we lose way more auditions than we win, we learn early on that failure is not a reflection of worth. It's actually just part of the process. That's true in marketing and outreach also. In the sales process, one reframe is I'm not trying to get people to say yes to my inquiries. I'm collecting no's because you know that most people are going to say no, but that's the only way to get to the yeses. So if you think about I have to do enough outreaches that I get all of these no's, then you know that there are hidden yeses in there, and that's the only way to get to the yeses. Performers also learn to take direction without taking it personally. So when the person directing you says, try something completely different, we don't take that personally as a failure to have given them what they wanted. We take it as an opportunity to be creative and to further collaborate and try to adjust and get to the final result that we all want. We learn to perform under pressure with things like equipment failing and with time constraints and learning to take direction from different people who give direction differently. Sometimes we're reading difficult scripts, and we learn that how we handle those challenges matters more than whether the challenges exist or not. Resilience isn't about avoiding setbacks. It's about knowing what to do when those setbacks happen. And what performers know, and what we do every day, is that you don't have to wait to feel like everything's going perfectly, to feel completely confident or totally ready. You just have to figure out how to work with what's right in front of you. You name it, sit with it, accept it, reframe it, and then act. So here's your challenge for this week. Identify one external circumstance that's currently affecting your work or life. Something that's maybe a constant that you just wish was a little different. And then walk through the framework with just that one thing. Name it. What's actually happening without the story, just the data. Sit with it. What do you feel about this right now? Don't rush past it, just acknowledge it. Accept it. This is what's real right now. Reframe it. What is the opportunity here? What can you learn? Who would you need to be to work effectively within these constraints? Make sure your reframe is true, that it's energizing, that it doesn't catastrophize, and that it's kind, that you're being kind to yourself. And then act. What's one small step you can take based on that reframe? So go ahead and try that this week. One setback or one external that you're trying to navigate, those 5 steps, and then the reframe. Document what changes and what happens. If you want a review of these steps, you can text VOICE to 55444. So to bring this back full circle, this is the episode that you're listening to or watching right now. That is my 3rd attempt at this particular episode. I'm not here recording now because I'm exceptionally resilient or have everything figured out, not even close, but because these external factors that were causing issues don't have to determine what happens next. The same is true for all of us. Whatever we're navigating does not have to determine our trajectory. What determines our trajectory is whether you can name what's real, feel it, sit with it, accept it, reframe it, and then take one small action to move forward. Thanks for listening. And regardless of what my equipment or technology wants to do, I will see you next week.